Welcome to the Beyond the Tools podcast, Ryan. I'm super excited to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So, Ryan, I know you have a pretty interesting background in history, in the trades and otherwise. I'm curious if you can tell us a little bit about how you got started in this industry and what your experience has been.
That's kind of funny. So, I mean, I've coming from someone who has a law enforcement background that is actually retired from a Tennessee police department in a big city, and then it's like all police officers work extra jobs, standing over directing traffic, doing whatever. Well, my extra job was remodeling, and so I would do that, and kind of got to where I liked it, but so I turned it into a business, and then from that standpoint, it's kind of like the police department was somewhat my secondary employment, even though it was my main employer. So, but I got into it, doing framing and roofing and everything that you could think of. And what I quickly noticed is how many people that are in this thing. Just if you ask somebody, and still it's true today, hey, do you know anybody that can lay tile in my house? They're going to immediately be like, I can do that. And then the funny part about that is they probably can, but is it going to look like a gravel road when you walk on it? So that was funny to me because there are so few people that are that have the quality and the mindset that they actually care, not to be a perfectionist, because that's another side of a problem, but that they actually care about what their work looks like, and but they're able to have the speed to still be able to get it done to make money, and go from there. So that's how I got into it for sure.
And was it like a slow transition into the remodeling business, or did a day come that you were like, I'm gonna do this 100%?
So it didn't take me long that I was working 100 hours a week doing both. And I would position myself on a shift to where basically I would work, at 10:30 at night to 7 o'clock in the morning doing department stuff. And then from there I would go and work till about 2, 3, and I'd crash and then go do it again. And of course, my days off were not Saturday and Sunday on the police department. So they were like Monday and every other Tuesday. That's a joke. But you got two together. So I would go, and those days, I mean, I would be 30 hours in those 2 days, just making sure I could hammer out most of it. Then I was able to give myself off somewhat Saturday and Sunday to try to recover.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah.
So when you made the switch, I guess, and you kind of hinted at that too with taking on whatever projects that you can, how did that go? And did you eventually narrow down?
Yeah. So the two trades that I actually liked the most were, you know, air conditioning and plumbing. And that still remains true today. Uh, and so from that point, you got to fast forward several years, and I had got injured and had a spinal fusion, and then actually had been on the department long enough that I pensioned out. And about 9 months after that, a year after that, I started trying to get back into it, and doing what I could do with it. But and so then I created. It's kind of funny. I went and I'm not a test taker, but I learned how to take tests.
Hmm.
So I went and passed the state plumbing exam and an HVAC exam, and had a gas mechanical license. And so one day I ran an ad, and a guy responded from South Dakota, and it was kind of weird. And I responded back to him. He says like 5 weeks later or something. But and when we met, literally, that's when the rocket ship took off, and I didn't even know that I was on it.
Mhm.
But I look back now, and we're still together doing the same thing. So
Wow, that's incredible. So I'm sure there's a lot that you can go through there, but to give our audience a little bit of insight into what rocket ship you were on,
Yeah.
so tell us a little bit about that.
Of course, 2007 was bad for the housing market here in the States, and we were very heavy on new construction, doing plumbing and AC. So Rick, he was with me. He was pretty much running all the crews and everything that needed to be done, the job and stuff like that. Because he was actually the first person that I have ever met, and still to this day, he's the only person I've ever met that is he's a perfectionist, and that's challenging sometimes. But he literally is the only master of every trade that I've ever seen.
Mhm.
And he and I have done everything that you can do to a house, including totally gut and remodel houses and stuff like that. But he ended up going back. I ended up doing an exit with that company, and he ended up going back to South Dakota, which is where he was from. And I said, if I ever do it again someday, and he stopped me, he goes, you mean if we ever do it again someday? Because he says, it will be in Florida. Now I live in South Florida. Now he lives in South Florida. So, and we're doing it again. And we've got, a great company that is totally challenging, totally different than how it was then. But, and we've had, which I thought would never be another learning curve, but a second learning curve, but I think it's made us a whole lot better.
Mm. So you guys met, you built this successful company, you got out of it. What prompted you to say, okay, we actually are going to do this again?
So as I was looking, I had to call somebody one day to have them look at my AC unit because I didn't have any gauges. I didn't have anything to, other than a meter to be able to read voltage. And I knew it was a refrigerant issue. And not that it matters, but it ended up being a reversing valve. So I was like, okay, what's the issue here? And the issue was 4 companies later, they were like, one guy says, I think it's the reversing valve. And I was like, nice. So that was just 4 companies that showed up. I can't tell you how many didn't. And I was like, okay. And from there, I called him and I said, how cold is it in South Dakota? He said, it's freezing. I said, well, let me tell you what happened. Told him. And he said, let's do it. And so in 2019, we started putting everything together to do that. And in 2020, we started another one.
Wow. Okay. So, given you had built a business together before, you're going into doing this again back in 2020. What was it going into it that you saw as the path to be able to, well, I guess first of all, what were you trying to build? And then what did you see as the path to be able to get there?
Great question. So the difference is my mindset then is we just need to find good technicians that we can monitor and they can do the work, and the rest of it we're good. Wrong. So yes, I was correct about finding great technicians, and that is so much more challenging today. Um, which is it's really just what is in the marketplace. And when you realize that as a owner of a company, your competitors, you all have the exact same pool for all of your employees when it comes to technicians. So there's only so much real estate between you and in your area, and you're all going after the same people. And the one who finds the right ones that care about the work, they can go to a job. Number one, you show up for it, and that we knew we could control. And but what we didn't know, and it's always the things that you don't know until you know, and then when you know, it's like But once we finally figured that component out on getting them there, we knew they would be good with customers because we worked with them, we trained them, but we still did not know their skill set level. And there's, so many people. I always say, the best day that you're going to do on your job for any company is the day you interview.
Mm.
And from there, most people start to fall off. And it's simply because their height, your height, um, everything is just words. So unless you've got some sort of working workshop that you can run them through which we do, a working interview, troubleshoot this system to see what it is. It's challenging, And if they know the lingo, just because they've been a helper, it's even harder. But then it takes about 30 days usually to find out from callbacks, which will crush you in a business. That they go out, they're nice, they do whatever it is that they do. They don't die. And they might be like, oh, here's a problem. One, it's bad capacitor, for instance. Let's just change capacitor. And they didn't check other things. We check everything every time because that is also another opportunity to get them on a service plan, to upsell, to get what's needed. And I always say they're only your customer until they're not. And you're one check away, you're one missed phone call away, you're one misdiagnosis away from the position of them not being a customer. So you're not, again, you don't know what you don't know about technicians and what they're going to do and not do until they're out there. Then it's like call after call after call. And then you realize, it's little Johnny who you're like, I thought he was going to be good. So now you've got to go play damage control and do that. And that is still to this day the number one challenge, to finding the right people and do it. And I've found too, money doesn't motivate everybody. And so it doesn't matter what you pay them. But then there becomes this sense of you can't do it without me, and a sense of entitlement. And it's kind of, and if you've got, 30 calls a day and you lose a tech to being sick, you lose a tech to another company for any reason, now all of a sudden you're trying to play catch up and you're starting to fall behind because you can't get to your customers. And that is hands down the number one challenge today. It's not fixing something. It's being able to continuously do what you say you're going to do, because you're one day away from them saying, I'll go over here and try this company.
Mm. So I'm curious, I guess, with that, what are some of the things you've put into place to kind of minimize that risk as much as possible?
So the difference between then and now is, before it was yellow page advertising. Today it's social media, and you pretty much are working for Google. And then it was a different mindset of, I'm going to stay over to finish this job and I'm going to do it correctly, versus now, I've got to go meet my buddies to play poker at 5 and it's 4:15. So not just this business, but other businesses that I have had or I have now, it all comes down to playbooks. Everything comes down to a playbook. And the reason why, what the cool thing about the playbook is once you get it dialed in, and you're always going to tweak it, not revamp it, tweak it. Because if you follow it and someone comes to you and says, hey, I've got this issue or that issue, and you stop right there and say, chapter 2 of this section is what you're looking for. Otherwise, you're going to go down a rabbit hole and they probably stopped you when you were walking by, or they called you while you were in the middle of doing something. And so now that process of whatever you were doing just got derailed.
Mhm.
And then when that happens 10 times a day, all of a sudden you become micro crazy mentally. And when after doing that a couple of times, these people will be like, I'd go ask, Ryan, what to do about this, but he's just going to tell me where to go in the playbook because I need you to go look at the playbook
Mm.
because if you do it by the playbook, I train and teach by the playbook, and we do that consistently across all levels. They're going to go to the other colleagues to ask them if it's an issue that they're just not, because their skill set levels are different. Everybody's skill set levels are different.
Yeah.
But that's hands down number one. And then number two is scorecards. When
Mm.
when they realize that you're using a scorecard, and that is how they get bonuses, how they get paid, who's kind of up for a new vehicle, take home vehicles, other benefits that are just there that help them, or that they're like, okay, I've got a company cell phone, a take home vehicle, a gas card, and I don't have to worry about that. And you put a monetary value on that, and you're like, wow, that saves me $1,500 a month
Mm.
just in that kind of stuff. Now it starts to make sense for them, and they're like, I get incentivized for even getting something as a Google review,
Right.
converting a call into a job, um, and then taking that extra few minutes at the end and saying, who else do you know that can help, that we can help with any AC or plumbing problems? Because everybody knows somebody, but
Mm.
until you ask them, they're not going to be like, man, I'm so glad you came over here. I've got this biggest problem. I'm so glad that you fixed it. By the way, let me give you somebody else's number over here. Nobody thinks about other people's problems when they're
Yes.
in their own problem. So you
Yeah.
got to be forward thinking and do that.
I love that. And I really want to dig deeper into both of those topics because I think there's a lot that we can get into there that'll be really helpful for everybody listening. So, I guess to rewind a little bit there, Ryan, was this something that you did in the previous business, the remodeling business, or was it that when you started Dr. Finn, you're like, okay, we need this? Or, like most things, something terrible happened and you were like, never again, I got to put something in place.
Yeah. So back in the beginning, I never knew what a playbook was other than football. What I didn't do is correlate the two at that time. So I'm a Nick Saban nut. I think he's business wise is just amazing. And people look at it all the time. They're like, why is Nick so good at what he does? And really, it's all playbook consistency. And he'll tell you, he's like, I pull my people in, my players in. So I look at that as I pull the employees, technicians in, and I ask him, what are your goals? What do you want to do? And then once they tell you what their goals are, every time they do something, you have to ask them, is this right here going to get you to whatever the goal is that they told you about? So you're able to be successful
Mm.
in winning whatever that event is. And he's all the time talking about how people's like, look, we got to go out there and we got to win this game. Don't don't look at winning the game. Win every single play.
Mm.
So when you go onto a job, do your stuff consistently every single time, and you will cut down massively on mistakes. On You will have the consistency, and people will see that confidence within you, and they will be like, "Man, I've got the right technician here. I got the right company here." And I hear that all the time. Um, and then you end up winning. The results are going to be the results.
Mm.
So,
So, when it comes to making that playbook, where did you start?
so I did some pretty deep dives into a couple of people. One of them was Allison Maslan, uh, and she's got one. So I've got this thing. I've never been a book reader my whole life, and now I am. And if your book makes to where I get the hard copy, it goes on my shelf. So these two here, and this is actually Allison's book, but it's called Skellerfell. And she doesn't pay me anything for doing this. And but it's like this is where I started. And I really liked it. I liked her. I liked what a lot of things were about. There's a lot of things in there that I took and I learned. But then I started looking at a couple others, and the one that really resonated with me, and I don't think it's because we have the same first name, but Ryan Dice. He's got this thing called Get Scalable, and this guy is a marketing guru from way back, and he literally takes you to a very simple way of laying out how you do this, and then being able to put something in place with the playbooks. That's where I learned about the scorecards, and then being effective.
Mm.
But the one thing that I did realize is that looking at all this, I would go into the office or be on a job site somewhere, and somebody would come up to me and they would ask me a question. And I was so used to fixing the problem for them
Mm-hmm.
that now it's so much easier for me to be like, page 5, chapter 2. What does it say?
Yeah.
So that was my biggest piece that's not in either one of these books, but that was my biggest piece that I really found that made it potential, available to be scalable.
Hmm. So was it the technician role specifically that you started with, and you're like, okay, we're gonna develop this playbook. This, I don't know, this is how you run like your initial diagnostic. Or how was it that you started? Yeah, did you start with one role and some of those common questions that you were getting?
I did. I actually started because, again, I didn't know what I didn't know. So I actually started with marketing.
Yeah.
And because to me, everything starts with marketing. And if you are great there, now all of a sudden the phone starts ringing. Now let's go to the CSRs. And we've got one for them as well. And that's the big one because you probably spent $100 to make that phone ring. And now you've got somebody who is in a different mindset every day, all day, because they've just got through dealing with a customer who was not so nice. They've got the phone ringing. They're not able to get to it. The back office is not able to get to it. Whatever the noise is, and everything is just noise, they are frustrated because they feel like they're losing.
Mm.
And then once they get back to what really is going on here and what's wrong, then they're able to get back into whatever that initial moment was, and they're totally lost. So got the marketing done. Now we got to take that $100 call because I told everybody one day I had a meeting with several technicians and CSRs and other people on, and I took $500, and I was like, every time that phone rings, this is what happens. And when you don't answer that phone consistently the same way, have the same confidence about you, which you get confidence from consistency, then I said, every time you do that, and I just threw a $100 bill and it went to the floor. I said, this is what's happening. And so I picked them back up and I said, you got to get them on the schedule. The next thing is it has to be today, because as they say, it's our money today and it's Disney World's money tomorrow, because something's going to happen.
Right.
Because life. So then it's like, all right, what's next? Now you got a technician that's going to show up. That process, you go back to their playbook, and because they've done the conversion to get them to the job, now you got a technician to get there, and he's got the same thing. You greet him the same way. You quickly try to give an idea as to for yourself as to what the problem could be. That way you can decide what you're going to do, which way you're going to go with it, and get the, because we do something about free estimates, and we have to quickly be able to diagnose this or tell them, look, we're going to have to start pulling tools out of the van. And once we do that, clock starts. So them being able to go through that whole process, because there's nothing worse than going to a job, them spending 30 minutes there, and then it falls flat. And then they're like, well, they just weren't interested today. Okay, well, you spent $100 for the phone to ring, and you spent money on that person to answer the phone and get it on the schedule, and then you spent money for the technician to get there. Now it's failing. So that's where you got the playbooks come into place. We do this, this, and this. And if it looks like it's not going to be anything, we're on to the next one. And if it looks like it's going to be something, then we're going to do the right thing, diagnosing this thing and figuring out what needs to be done. And then we're going to go into that playbook of how to take care of that right now, not move that till tomorrow or whatever. And then make money from it. And whatever's next in the playbook all the way to the end. And then there's another then there's another part that comes back to follow up.
I
for
like
both
that.
Marketing and CSRs. So
Right. Yeah, so that makes sense. I like how you approached it, basically following the customer journey of when somebody comes in and all the interactions that happen after that. Obviously, with a playbook, one of the goals there, of course, is to standardize things and make sure that everything's at the same standard no matter who the person is doing it. I am curious, though, is this something that you got your team involved in developing, or was this something that you kind of got into each of those roles and mapped it out and then trained them on it?
initially, I got into the marketing one, but now whoever is in charge of that department, they are the owner of that playbook. So whoever is over the CSRs, over marketing, over sales, over technicians, whoever is that, because there's going to come times that things are going to be like, we need to change this, we need to do that. And it's up to them to go to the office manager and say, here's the change I need to make to this. It gets made. That way it gets updated in everyone's book. And once that's done, then, you can get back to consistency, but you have pointed out what I like to do. And this is what actually they did at the police department. So everything was a SOP, standard operating procedure. Well, we had to sign for our general orders and procedural orders and stuff. And basically it is, whether we read it or not, but we're signing saying that we read it and we asked whatever questions that we needed to move forward. That way, when it came back, because usually what happens is, what do you mean I followed the playbook? Yeah, but step 4 changed 2 months ago. And now, so did you forget or did you not read it? Either way, let's resolve this and let's move forward with it, because this is why it failed this time.
And I know you showed a couple physical binders there. Is that typically where it lives, like a physical binder, or how is it that your team accesses the playbooks?
We have both. So we have physical binders, but it's digital too. But there has to be a revision date on everything to make sure, because before you know it, they're going to get crossed.
Yeah.
So that, and digital is better. And we now, and we're going to this year, move everything over to where it's the tablets, to where they can go into a site that we've got that's quite honestly nothing more than a landing page, and it's got everything in there for them. So,
okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So I'd love to explore the scorecards a little bit deeper here. How did you go about, well, I guess first of all, what is a scorecard and how has that been impactful in your business?
So it's 5 to 7 components that we measure. And for technicians, for instance, in your CRM, it usually says that they were dispatched on this call and it took them this much to drive there, and they're on the call. Uh, and there's different KPIs that we look at, and one of those is what are they getting 5-star reviews? Are they their callbacks? How many callbacks do they have? What are their conversions from going to a job and that converting over to this? And then there's some minor things that are like, are they showing up to work? Are they taking care of their vans, their vehicles, and making sure, that's kind of a side note. That's not something that they do, but their manager does. But they know every week, this is a scorecard. This is what happened, you know, and you get them into them knowing that they're going to have a review of this every week. And that's how they get bonused out.
Hmm.
And it's also how they get moved out. And I like to say there's two things you can do. You can coach them up or you can coach them out.
Hmm.
But you got to if you don't coach them, then you can't expect them to follow the playbook.
Right. So with those scorecards, is it just a goal number or is it like this is the minimum, this is good, this is fantastic? Like how does that work?
Um, yes, it's a rating system. You got to where you went on. Let's just say Johnny went on 4 calls a day, did 20 calls this week. He his drive times, were good. His time on the jobs, based upon how long the job should have been, based on how much it was paid. That looks good. So he might get, 4s on those, 5s on those, whatever. And then it gets to, did he get reviews? So Johnny didn't get any reviews. Well, he's not asking then. So that goes to, let's say, a 1 after 20 calls and he doesn't get any. And is he staying is he staying on target to where he's able to get things done? Is he efficient with his time? Is he efficient with the material? Did he go on a job and how many callbacks he had? So it's all a rating. It's all a rating scale.
Hmm.
And that's, he knows, and a lot of times, it's not an issue because it's incentivized through money. And a lot of times, there'll be somebody's like, yeah, I don't like asking for reviews. And you're like, nice. So, you deal with that accordingly, but it rates them, it scores them. It's almost like you don't want to get an F when you were in grade school, or I guess before they went to the number system. It's kind of like, I can't take this home. Take this to your mom. Take this to your sister and have her sign it for me, please.
Yeah. That's amazing. Okay, so the scorecards have helped you to essentially outline what's expected of that person in that role and then rewarding them accordingly. What was the impact of doing that for your business? I mean, it might seem obvious to anybody listening that this can be helpful, but I'm curious what specifically that helped you guys do.
Uh, it helped us manage better. It helped us find out sooner who was doing what they were supposed to and who wasn't. Who was there telling you that they were the best technician in the country and they installed a toilet backwards.
Mm.
You know, that kind of stuff. And I mean, that's obviously extreme, but it literally makes it to where you are not getting, these shoulder taps every day, all day. It's taking you away from what you need to do. And it's showing too consistency. And consistency is like everything. If you can do something consistently, I mean, you're going to look like you know what you're doing. The confidence is going to be within you. The results are going to come. I mean, that doesn't mean, if you consistently do something wrong, you're still going to be successful. You're just going to be wrong successful. So that's the biggest thing is it just, there's another guy that I've got a hard back book of, and you'll probably recognize this guy, but and I still follow him, but Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time. The big thing about Dan is that I liked about him is he's being consistent and saying, and what do you know, go to page 2. Here it is. That buys back so much of your time and keeps you mentally strong because you're not going down these rabbit holes.
Mm.
So that's by far the number one thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I remember a couple of years ago, I was struggling with something in my company and particularly being like pulled in a lot of different directions. And a coach I had at the time that I met was like, well, if you're the magical vending machine and every time somebody needs something, they just press the button on the machine, they're going to keep pressing the button. So having something that, yeah, probably annoys them in the instant that you're like, oh yeah, go check this section in the playbook. But you're absolutely right. It trains people not to be reliant on you, which gives you your time back and allows you to grow up the team more and more.
100%. 100%.
So for anybody listening that has never done a playbook or scorecard, they're hearing you talk about this. I guess what's one piece of advice that you would give on how they can start to implement this in their business?
I mean, it's kind of what works best for you. I personally like Ryan Dice's system. Uh, um, he's got all kinds of different stuff, but that programs and stuff like this that you can get into with him. But his system, I think, is one of the best ones out there right now. And I've looked at several, and I've pretty much narrowed it down to those two. And I like both of them. I like Allison's too, but I just think Ron's is easier to follow. Uh, and I like his team too. They were very responsive.
Mm. What do you think is one mistake that a lot of business owners make when it comes to empowering their team and developing these playbooks and training?
I would say not setting a clear standard as to this is what we're all trying to achieve the same thing here, and this is how we're going to do it. This is our standard. And if you're not up to the standard, then you can't be on the team. And when you assign a role to someone, make them own that role.
Mm.
Let them know that they're important, that this is their baby to nurture, to grow, and they should be proud of it because this is going to be something that should stay in the company for a long time with just being tweaked. And as time goes on and you progress and you move up, people are like, yeah, John made that playbook 10 years ago and it's still being used every day. And that's something, to be proud of. But then setting the tone, you've got to be able to set the tone as to how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it. And that if we don't do it, you've got to be in a position that you've got your own playbook. And I'm not talking about up here, it's about on paper
Mm-hmm.
that you're going to do to follow every single day to make sure that you're being successful and trying to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. And it's making sure they are doing A, B, and C.
Absolutely. So, Ryan, I'm sure our listeners are going to want to connect with you further and learn more about you. What's the best way that they can reach out?
So I have Dr. Finn AC in plumbing, and it's kind of crazy because I used to have an email that was difficult because of all of the spam and all the other stuff. So I went back to just Ryan at drfinnac.com and for that reason. And there's several things. I love to collaborate with people, especially other plumbers, other AC companies, because I really want to do more of business help with people who want to do business, because doing business today is totally different than how it used to be. And I always tell people I've got the most expensive education of anybody I know. And then I still find myself doing that. I'm like, oh, that was stupid tax. And it's like I keep paying it. So, but yeah, I mean, anybody that's got questions or wants to collaborate or just thinks that you know, they need to know one little piece that might help them get over that hump. Because a lot of times, whatever it is, it's one thing. And it's now that one thing probably is going to spark 10 other things, but staying stagnant is terrible. So
Mm. Thank you so much, Ryan. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
awesome. Well, thank you for having me, and it was fun. Definitely.